This literally could not have happened at a better time. Not that I'm glad it did, but it proves something that I want to talk about today, and that is retention with HEMA-Free or allergy-conscious products. One company removed HEMA from their formula, didn't tell anyone, and the nail techs lost it on the socials because their clients were all of a sudden having retention issues. And I think this generally just speaks to a bigger problem where nail techs and DIYers have become complacent and reliant on high amounts of monomer that these companies have been using for years, where it's got great adhesion and bonding power without having to perfect the prep. And so today I want to show you guys my prep because I have perfected it where I no longer have issues with hypoallergenic products, to the point where my entire nail will come off the bed, but the product is still on there. Let's get into it. Hello, besties. If you're new here, my name is Ren. I developed an allergy to HEMA, HEA, HPMA, and acrylomorpholine back in 2024, and since then have done obsessive levels of research to find products that I could still use with my allergy and share that information with all of you. If that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and do all the engagement things because it helps me out tremendously. Before I get into my prep routine, I want to talk a little bit about the complaints with hypoallergenic, allergy-conscious, HEMA-free, whatever you want to call it, products. Now, HEMA, as most of you know, because I've talked about before, is an excellent bonder. And that's why all these cheap companies that flooded the market during the pandemic really took advantage of it and just started putting it in everything because it made it seem like their products were amazing for a great price. And this is why people defend those cheap products so much. Because they're like, oh, my clients have 8-week retention. This started a wave of like flexing, basically, where all these nail techs were showing off their retention and talking about my clients have gone 3 months without coming to me. And look, their nails are still on. First of all, not only is that extremely unsafe and very damaging to the natural nail to keep product on that long, but it's also just really unrealistic and setting these crazy standards. I mean, back when I was growing up, like the standard for going back to the salon was 2 weeks, at the most 3. Like if you got 3 weeks out of a set, like it was amazing. But now if you're not getting at least 6 weeks, then your nail tech sucks, the product sucks, throw everything away. And no, again, this is an unrealistic standard that, in my opinion, was created by all these companies flooding the market that were just adding crazy amounts of monomer because the retention was going to be good no matter what. And then everyone was going to love their products and then go on social media to brag about their amazing retention, when really it's just the fact that these products were doing the majority of the work for you. Enter the allergy crisis and all the companies start switching to HEMA-free, HPMA-free, et cetera, et cetera. And now all of a sudden, everyone's having retention issues. We just saw this happen with the gel bottle. They removed HEMA. They didn't tell anybody. Everybody was so pissed off. All the clients were coming back with retention issues. And although with that company, and I've spoken about it before, if you want to see that video, I'll link it. I don't think the issue was the lack of HEMA. The issue is their formula in general. But again, it speaks to a bigger problem that people need to adjust their prep to HEMA-free products. It's the same thing with TPO, and I don't agree with the TPO ban. TPO was an extremely efficient photo initiator. And in removing that, companies had to adjust their formulas to maintain the same level of retention and curing efficiency. Not all of them have succeeded in that. But I primarily want to talk about these 3 products right here. We've got Attain Adhesion, Hona Pure Foundation, and Jimmy Gel. Now, when I first started using these products, when I first got my allergy, I also had retention issues because, again, I didn't have the prep routine that I have now. I was just expecting to do the same thing and have the same results. My prep work prior to my allergy was like basically non-existent. I rarely did cuticle work other than maybe just pushing them back. I wasn't as into nail art and designs as I am now. I would literally just slap the product on and go on with my day. I just wanted quick. I wanted efficient, just like all the other girlies who have got their allergies from these horrible products because they just wanted cheap, fast, and efficient. And they wanted something that would last because we didn't have time to sit and do our nails every week. So when I first started using Jimmy Gel, I literally had them all pop off within a week. And now when this happens, everyone rushes to blame the product, but I was like, wait a minute, there's got to be something I'm doing wrong. I watched a ton of videos. I adjusted my prep routine. I started doing light and safe cuticle work, prepping my nail plate, all that jazz. And then also using things like dehydrator, primer, and then this guy right here, this is Tack, a bonder, works amazingly well. Also started using the Hona bonder. And so then when it came time to try Attain Adhesion, I had pretty good retention. But I have seen a lot of complaints. Same thing with Jimmy Gel. And again, it comes down to people just not adjusting their prep to make up for the lack of monomers in these products that would generally just have it adhere to pretty much anything. And again, I have the evidence right here. I was lifting a treadmill, my hand slipped, it caught my nail, and it tore my nail almost entirely off the bed, but the product is still on there. It has not budged. Mind you, this happened 3 weeks in, and it's going to stay on there, and I'm just going to have to clip the growth. But that is incredible retention. And I use Hona True Foundation and also their bonder. So again, it is entirely possible to get amazing retention out of hypoallergenic products if you have a good prep and you adjust your prep to make up for the lack of monomers. But again, the issue is a lot of people aren't willing to do that. They want quick, easy, and affordable, and that does come at a cost. Sometimes a very high cost when you get a lifelong medical condition. So is it really worth having a product with a ton of monomer that you could just slap on there and have it stick to then have bleeding, oozing cuticles? Personally, I think not, but that's a matter of personal preference and your own judgment. So do you, boo? But here's what I do. I've had a lot of requests to show you guys my prep routine because usually in my videos I just skip that, otherwise they would be too long. So I wanted to dedicate an entire video to talking about prep, especially in the context of people who have an allergy and have to use allergy-conscious products. So without further ado, here it is. Now currently I have on PLA Builder Gel in this milky shade, which is 007. And here I've gone ahead and just e-filed it down to a super duper thin layer. Now my prep tends to look different depending on which system I'm doing, but I always like to leave a little layer of something on my natural nails. And so all I'm going to do now is just very lightly etch and even out that natural nail. All right, now I'm also going to go ahead and file them down because I'm doing soft gel extensions next, so I don't need them to be this long. But it was really great to see them grow out with that builder gel. All right, we'll leave them about there. I always like to leave them a tad bit past the free edge, especially when I'm doing soft gel, so that any seepage won't end up on the bottom skin here. And I like to just file them into a bit of a squoval shape, especially when I'm doing almond tips. Now for everyone's favorite part, cuticle prep. So I have done this so many different ways and tried all the different techniques, yes, including this. And although this is very convenient and actually very enjoyable to do, when you already have an allergy, you really, really want to minimize any sort of open skin. And so I rather just avoid the risk altogether. And so we're just going to use a cuticle pusher, but instead of pushing, what I'm going to do is just lift very, very gently, just kind of lift that pocket out of the way. And now I'm going to come in with my HEMA loop tool. This thing is my best friend. And again, very, very gently go around and get rid of any cuticle. This thing works so well, and you really just need like the lightest little bit of pressure because you don't want to scrape at your nail plate either. Now, usually I don't have a lot of grown out eponychium, which is this skin right here. But because I've been redoing my floors and I have not used a single drop of cuticle oil, I figured this was actually the perfect time to show you all the prep because they look horrendous. Now we all call it the cuticle, but the actual cuticle is just this white stuff that's on your actual nail plate. This skin right here is the eponychium, and then when you create this little pocket, the skin here that you're pushing up is your proximal nail fold. Even though we are not nail techs, I think it's really important as DIYers to still be somewhat versed on your nail anatomy so that you know what you are doing to yourself and how gentle you have to be. Now the eponychium here, a lot of people would be bothered by this and trim it off. If you are going to do that, the best way is with a really sharp pair of cuticle scissors. Now, as you can see, mine is really thin, so it's just coming right off. I much prefer the scissors to the nipper, because again, we're avoiding opening any skin. And unless you're extremely experienced with nippers, and even then, there's still a chance. I prefer to just use these. There's significantly less risk of nipping yourself. And typically I would just leave that, but I wanted to show you guys an alternative if you don't like it. And that was very painless. And that is all I'm going to do to the cuticle. As you can see, it is still mostly attached. There is no deep pocket for any potential monomer to enter your skin. And although it's not as clean looking as a Russian manicure per se, it'll do, especially once you add cuticle oil. Now, I make my own cuticle oil pens for regular use, but at my desk, I have this guy, which I absolutely love just based off how it smells alone. And I'll also show you guys how to make that cuticle oil. And if you're consistent with oiling, then you won't even have much of a cut anyway. So once you're mostly satisfied with your cuticles, you're gonna go ahead and just dust off and then go in with some alcohol. This helps get off any residue, as well as help prep the nail plate. Now, prep is seriously one of the most important when you have a nail allergy, and that is for a multitude of reasons. First, because you have to be extremely careful not to open up any skin, because that is the fastest way to get monomers into your bloodstream. But when you're using allergy-conscious products and you don't have all those monomers as a crutch, you do have to be very diligent with your prep if you want them to last as long. So now we're just gonna go ahead with an actual file, not a buffer, and etch the nail plate. See how there's lines and grooves in there versus if I were to just buff, look at that. It's more of a smooth surface, and although it is a little bit rough, nowhere near as rough as creating these lines and ridges. And again, you don't want to be too rough with this, and this is also why I like to leave a thin layer of product. And I am using the 180 side of my file. If I was using an e-file for this, which I don't recommend, I would be using a 240 sanding band. Again, you don't want to overdo this, especially if you don't have any layer of product underneath, because then you'll start taking layers off your natural nail. All right, Once you're satisfied with that, I go in with my dehydrator. I just use the model ones. It really doesn't matter which dehydrator you use. And you should see the nail start to dry up like so. And now I go in with a primer, and my favorite one is by PLA. It does not contain methacrylic acid, although I also use the Light Elegance one occasionally, which does contain methacrylic acid. With primer, a little goes a long way. You just want to do the tiniest bit. If you are using one that does contain methacrylic acid, you need to keep that off the skin at all costs. All right, and now we are ready for product. Now, this step varies depending on what I am doing, but since I will be using the HONA system, I do go in with a bonder. I have this one, which is True Bond, and then I also have a Light Elegance Tack. You want to get a very light layer and then kind of rub it into the nail to make sure that it adheres to all those ridges that we made. This isn't base coat. It shouldn't be applied like a base coat. With these bonders, you do have to cure them for 60 seconds. I've gotten a ton of messages from besties who have been struggling with retention on products that I've recommended, so I hope that was helpful. You also have to keep in mind that everyone's anatomy is different. Everyone's nail beds are different. Some people have oilier nail beds. I do not have that problem. My everything is drier than the Sahara Desert. I do not drink water like I should. Don't be like me. However, they are naturally very thin. And so I've made adjustments for that, like not using an E-file on my natural nail. Even with higher, finer grit sanding bands, like a 240, I still just rather lightly etch with a 180 grit file. And again, it comes down to personal preference and finding what works for you. Sometimes that takes a while to find that perfect combination of products and prep to suit your nail beds and your lifestyle. As I always say, I'm incredibly rough on my nails, as you can clearly see, and I can still get them to last 3+ weeks. I usually don't because I get bored of them and change them out every 2 weeks, but I can, and I have done so before. Like I just did a video with the PLA builder gels where I had them on for 4 weeks. Now, of course, if you're a nail client, then it's gonna be a lot harder to kind of find what works. And a lot of nail techs, especially if you're going to a salon versus a private nail tech, they're not as willing to work with you and invest that time into finding out what works best for you and your lifestyle. Instead, they'll just tell you to change your lifestyle and like not use your nails as tools and not wash dishes and blah, blah, blah. But again, that's not realistic. I would never adjust my entire lifestyle just to have some nails. And that's one of the primary reasons why I've been doing them myself for years to begin with. But anyway, let me know in the comments below what you do for a prep routine, what has worked for you, what type of nail beds do you have, and if you've had retention issues with allergy-conscious products and how you've solved them. Can't wait to hear from y'all. As always, if you aren't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. Subscribing is free, and you know what else is free? All this work that I do, all the research that I pour into my content. So it really means the world to me when you guys subscribe and engage with my content. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next one.